Welcome to the School of Love, the place where miracles are normal. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the School of Love, the place where we learn practical tools based on scientific research and our own experiences towards improving ourselves, living life to its fullest, and contributing to the best of our abilities to the world around us. I am Dr. Grajdian, and I'm a professor of media studies and anthropology at Hiroshima University. In my free time, I am doing my best to guide you in building up a life of contentment, joy, and fulfillment while applying lessons learned in school to overcome the difficulties, challenges, and insecurities of the real world. In this video, the analysis centers on the concept of pragmatic love and its three core characteristics: compassion, courage, commitment, as encompassed in three cinema productions belonging to the science fiction genre: Blade Runner, released in 1982 under the direction of Ridley Scott; Baymax, or Big Hero 6, released in 2014 under the direction of Don Hall and Chris Williams; and Blade Runner 2049, released in 2017 under the direction of Denis Villeneuve. The analytical approach pursues a two-step procedure: the definition of each of the three dimensions and its subsequent integration within the mediatic phenomenological experience. The three movies were selected due to their subtle but convincing blending of Japanese and US American elements, the former two, and the dissolution of these elements into a continuum of futuristic neo-noir aesthetics, transcending conventional prerequisites of the prequel-sequel concatenation, the latter one. In the conclusion, I outline further potentialities of the concept of pragmatic love in everyday encounters, as well as its ideological extensions into awe, as both a necessity to action and a state of mind. And now, first things first, that is, two disclaimers. The first disclaimer serves to strongly emphasize the fact that this YouTube channel, The School of Love, is not part of my educational and research activities at Hiroshima University. It is nonetheless part of my privilege, joy, and sense of duty to propagate and implement knowledge, information, as well as motivation and inspiration outside the limited framework of academic endeavors. Together, we can build up a better tomorrow for as many of us as possible. The second disclaimer relates to the fact that I am a trained musician and musicologist, not a psychologist, therapist, or counselor. The ideas I am sharing in my videos reflect my deep-going preoccupation with life, my own life and other people's lives, and express the results of my experiences, my research, and, for better or for worse, my failures, as well as my recovery from those failures, recovery which is continuously ongoing. The ideas expressed in the videos on this channel named The School of Love cannot and may not and must not replace the consultation with specialists in whichever areas of your life you might have questions or you might struggle with. If you are new to the channel at this moment, I would like to ask you to please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting. Thank you very, very much. This helps us not only with that mysterious algorithm which seems to dominate the galaxy of YouTube, but also with contributing to the expansion of the community of humans doing their best to impact positively the world and those around them by discovering their authentic selves and living life wholeheartedly. Thanks again. And now back to today's topic, which is the reflection of the so-called pragmatic love in three science fiction movies, respectively an animation movie released since early 1980s. So Blade Runner, Baymax, Big Hero 6, released in 2014, and Blade Runner 2049, released in 2017. So throughout history, love has been perhaps the most observed and praised phenomenon in its various appearances, experiences, delusions. From an emotion to a mental state, love as pure love seems to have positioned itself at the center of humanity's preoccupation with itself. In contrast to that, in this video, the analysis encompasses the three core characteristics of pragmatic love as compassion, courage, and commitment, identified through extensive literature review and as displayed in three iconic cinematic productions. That's Blade Runner from 1982, directed by Ridley Scott, Blade Runner 2049, released in 2017, directed by Denis Villeneuve, and Baymax, or Big Hero 6, released in 2014, under the direction of Don Hall and Chris Williams. So these three iconic cinematic productions serve as independent variables in the analytical laboratory. The live-action cinema and animation at the intersection of Japanese and US American visions of life, artificial intelligence, and humanness convey overwhelming messages of past reluctance to see beyond a static identity model with the simultaneous subliminal push towards understanding one's own impact on the world and towards a dialectic dynamization of identificatory mechanisms. In doing so, they reveal the individual's propensity to become a self-stylizing architect, capable to grasp freedom in the name of radical responsibility, so that he or she turns from a victim of history to whom life happens into an active agent in the creation or co-creation process of the future and of reality. Accordingly, the current analysis takes into account three levels of the debate on the relationship between humans and robots, respectively bioengineered replicants, while reflecting on the dimensions circumscribing historical phenomena, social-cultural, economic, political, and technological educational. The central paradigm of pragmatic love is defined both as a state of mind comprising emotions, thoughts, ideals, and as the necessity to action in the realm of quotidian events and challenges. In order to analyze the internal architecture of pragmatic love as creatively explored by the three cinema releases, and in light of its core features, compassion, courage, and commitment, I follow the protocol of defining each of the concepts and subsequently critically observing their integration within the cinematic conglomerate on multiple levels. At the end, I wrap up major ideas and suggest further analysis objectives or research objectives in relation to similar mass media projects, detailing the not so visible extensions of pragmatic love as an individually internal affair seeking externalization. Methodologically, I draw on more than 20 years of empirical phenomenological fieldwork on Japanese animation, as well as in the slippery domain of Japanese and global mass media. The phenomenological experience is social-cultural contextualized, emulated on cinema and animation as discursive mass media and as performative orchestrations of an authentic self and resistance against conformity, uniformity, and the alleged superiority which comes from their association. Hence, live-action cinema and animation reveal the highest level of existential transcendence. The consumerist strategies visible in the global societies of late modernity turn out to be plain symptoms of a forever postponed confrontation with the individual reality, and not sustainable solutions in terms of personal fulfillment and or social cohesion. I observe the multiple layers of cinema as cumulative symbols of universal mass media, as cultural phenomena arrested in the stress ratio between visual representation and musical intertwining, between arts and media, embedded in bureaucratic structures of administration and self-organization, such as the release politics, the economic supervision of brand-related consumption, the social cultural management of producers and consumers, as well as the products themselves and their meta-narrative concatenations. As my sources, I rely on extensive fieldwork with long-term participatory observation and empirical data collection, resulting from archive research of Japanese and Western documents and from informal discussions with Japanese producers and with Japanese and non-Japanese fans, experts, and other consumers of products of popular culture, domestic and international. This complex endeavor allowed unexpected insights into the mechanisms of production, consumption, perception, and processing of media phenomena in Japan and worldwide. Taking into account the fact that the media industry and its products are extremely vivacious and almost painful in their superficiality, with a calculated momentary impact on audiences, the persistence and longevity of the Blade Runner problematic and its affiliated thematic complex throughout decades are a powerful reminder that vision, determination, and mastery are worthy assets in the hierarchy of human values, although not always forthrightly advertised as such. Loosely based on the science fiction novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, published in 1968 by Philip K. Dick, Blade Runner was focused on the disturbingly hypocritical representation of robots by humans and their coexistence, on the background of a dystopian future set in 2019 Los Angeles. The story unfolds as former police officer and Blade Runner Dick Deckard, embodied by Harrison Ford in one of his most iconic roles, is detained by Officer Gaff, who has a hobby of origami folding, and is brought to his former supervisor, Brandt. Brandt appoints him to track down 4 fugitive synthetic humans known as replicants, bioengineered by the powerful Tyrell Corporation to work on space colonies and to terminally eliminate or retire them, as they are on Earth illegally. Deckard agrees reluctantly, and during the subsequent development, he is confronted with circumstances and choices which test his ability to fulfill his task successfully, particularly because they compel him to question and to a certain degree to rethink his own humanity, both in relation to the humans around him and to the humanoid replicants he is supposed to kill. Released in 1982 under the direction of Ridley Scott, Blade Runner massively underperformed during its initial running and acutely polarized critics and viewers, with some praising its thematic complexity and visuals, and with others criticizing its slow pacing and lack of action, which was a necessary ingredient in the overall logic of the movie, meant to allow for the profoundly philosophical and ethical dimensions to emerge from within the depths of the dramaturgic architecture. Nonetheless, it turned throughout the decades into a cult movie, to be regarded as one of the all-time best science fiction productions. With its daunting and highly acclaimed soundtrack composed by Vangelis, Blade Runner's production design, depicting a high-tech but decaying future inspired by Tokyo's realities of the early 1980s, appears in historical perspective as a leading example of neo-noir cinema and as a foundational work of the cyberpunk genre. Moreover, it has been influencing various and numerous science fiction movies, video games, anime, so this is Japanese animation, productions, television series, while simultaneously bringing the work of Philip K. Dick to the attention of Hollywood executives. Several of his works were later adapted for cinema in impressive blockbusters, such as Total Recall from 1990, directed by Paul Verhoeven, based on Dick's 1966 short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, and Minority Report from 2002, directed by Steven Spielberg, based on Kick's eponymous short story from 1956, with Tom Cruise in the leading role. Baymax, or Big Hero 6, was released by Walt Disney Pictures as its 54th work in the Walt Disney Animated Classics series in the United States under the title Big Hero 6 on November 7, 2014, after having been premiered previously in Tokyo at the 27th Tokyo International Film Festival on October 23rd in 2014, and in Abu Dhabi at the Abu Dhabi Film Festival on October 31st, 2014. At first sight, Baymax, or Big Hero 6, a huge success, both on a critical and on a commercial level, is a culture product combining Western, that is US American animation styles, and Eastern, that is Japanese symbolical content. Moreover, it appears as a translucent and optimistic echo of the neo-noir dystopian science fiction movie Blade Runner from 1982. The plot of Baymax Big Hero 6 is simple and refers, after the exploration of the emotional intricacies of sisterhood in Frozen, released by Walt Disney Pictures 1 year prior in 2013, to the complex and often unexpectedly competitive relationship between brothers. The directors Don Hall and Chris Williams tackle, I would say with graceful realism, the problematic of brotherhood in the absence of a functional family as promoted by classic standards, thus redefining family and family structure as a site of gradual self-discovery. The plot evolves around the main character Hiro Hamada, a quite typical Japanese male name, who is a 14-year-old robotics genius living in the futuristic city of San Francisco, a concatenation of San Francisco and Tokyo. Raised by his aunt, Kes Hamada, and his older brother, Tadashi Hamada, after the death of his parents 10 years ago, Hiro spends his time participating in illegal robots fights until Tadashi takes him to the robotics center of his university, where he encounters Tadashi's friends, all of them robotics nerds. 2 girls, Go-Go and Honey Lemon, and 1 boy, Wasabi, as well as Fred, a sort of freeloader comic books fan hanging around in the laboratory. A little later, his brother Tadashi introduces Hiro to Baymax, the healthcare robot he had been developing in his quest to help people in need. Inspired by their enthusiastic research activity, by his brother's soft persuasion methods, and by Professor Robert Callaghan's laid-back encouragement, Hiro decides that he wants to join the team at San Francisco Institute of Technology and starts preparing to present a breathtaking innovation that would allow him to enroll. The subsequent development of the plot follows Hiro negotiating with the challenges and hardships of life, while learning to observe, analyze, and understand himself and those around him, deeply dialectic entities embedded in the same shared human condition. The 2017 released Blade Runner sequel, Blade Runner 2049, directed by Denis Villeneuve, is a reformulation of the century-old adage that being human is the most beautiful thing in the whole universe. Decisively belonging to the neo-noir science fiction cinematic category, Blade Runner 2014 takes place in 2014, 30 years following the events of the initial Blade Runner, an era in which bioengineered humans known as replicants are slaves. The plot centers on K, short for his serial number KD637, a Nexus 9 replicant who works for the Los Angeles Police Department, or LAPD, as a Blade Runner, an officer who hunts and retires or kills rogue applicants, admirably embodied by Ryan Gosling in one of his most memorable roles. As he retires Nexus 8 replicant Sapper Morton, he finds K finds, tracing the site of a tiny flower, a unique sign of natural life, in the chemical desert which is Morton's protein farm, a box buried under a dying tree. The box contains the remains of a female replicant who died during a cesarean section, demonstrating that replicants can reproduce biologically, previously thought impossible. K's superior, though, Lieutenant Joshi, fears that this could lead to a war between humans and replicants. She orders K to find and retire the replicant child to hide the truth, as further investigating this secret threatens to destabilize society and the course of civilization. Acclaimed by specialists for its staff performances, direction, cinematography, editing, musical score, production design, visual effects, and faithfulness to the atmosphere of the original film, and criticized for its overlong runtime, Blade Runner 2049 has grown increasingly popular with audiences since its release. Distinctly, viewers and critics alike recognize in its visual construction of the future the prerequisites of a world of immense discrepancies and unlimited greed on the one hand, and in its characters, predecessors of humans increasingly becoming unwelcome on their own planet, not by means of a nefarious, overexhausted nature, but by means of their fellow humans' malevolence on the other hand. The neo-noir science fiction genre delivers crucial dramaturgic pretexts to this more than dystopian vision of the consequences of current decisions, developments, choices. But Blade Runner 2049's significant contribution resides in its ability to convey seeds of hope and positive solutions in the purifying power of water, which surrounds the final climactic battle and eventually drowns the past symbolically, as well as in the transient but consistent suggestions and appearances of the natural habitat, such as the flower and the tree at the beginning of the movie, the sand and the sky, the ocean. While the initial Blade Runner was bleak in itself and did not attempt any catharsis-inspiring denouement to transcend its exclusively dark interiors, shying away from any sort of daylight or open spaces, Blade Runner 2049 employs precisely daylight and open spaces as metaphors for humanity's resurrection as a place of warmth, acceptance, and conviviality. Unlike Deckard's character, which incorporated the existential anguish of early 1980s due to the Cold War's threat of nuclear conflict, Kay's composure and trajectory is clearly one which mitigates hope and faith in the name of an authentic greater good, not the one promoted by mass and social media, politicians, and mega corporations. As to be shown later on, within these parameters of dramaturgic discourse, what might be described as pragmatic love with its three major features, compassion, courage, commitment, circumscribe the existence, relevance, and development of robots and of AI, artificial intelligence, within the human community. Compassion is one of the three elements contained in the structure of pragmatic love as an existential attitude, defined as the ability to feel, to identify with, and to integrate the emotions of someone else. Two parameters are fundamental in the equation of compassion: empathy and integrity. Empathy means precisely the skill to immerse into someone else's emotions, to feel them at the same level as the other person does. Generally, there are two categories of empathy: the cognitive one, referring to a type of empathy in which someone else's emotions are rationally known without any real involvement of feelings, and the emotional one, which is a central piece of the current argument. Integrity, on the other hand, implies the ability of the empathizing subject to keep his or her own individual boundaries and not to get dragged by and into the emotional flows and ebbs of someone else, regardless of how strongly connected they might be. While empathy is the foundation of interhuman interactions, it is integrity which allows compassion to become a functional skill. The initial Blade Runner explores in depth the various dimensions of what it means to be human and of what exactly defines humanity as a state of being within the larger cosmic circuit. The major element is empathy, which is employed in order to test the presumable humanity of those being chased and captured, and more specifically, in order to determine whether the person being tested is human or a replicant. In the latter case, they are supposed to be eliminated as they are deemed to be dangerous. A number of questions included in the test are focused on the treatment of animals because replicants seem to respond differently than humans without any signs of concern. Against the dystopian dark background of the movie, with its quasi-omnipresent corporate power, apparently omniscient, omnipotent police, the simultaneous exploration of the consequences of huge biomedical powers over the individual, in particular in relation with the replicants' implanted memories, occurs. The sense of oppression is amplified by the human's almighty control over the environment, going hand in hand with the absence of any natural life, so that artificial animals stand in for the extinct predecessors within the all-encompassing nocturnal atmosphere. While empathy is touted as humans' defining characteristic, it is eventually within the so-called Tears in the Rain 42-word monologue towards the end of the movie that the value of compassion as the ability to withstand rage and revenge is revealed. It consists of the last words of the character Roy Batty, dauntingly portrayed in the movie by Rutger Hauer, and has been regarded as perhaps the most moving death soliloquy in cinematic history, as it suggests that being human transcends death and nothingness, but cannot escape sharing one's common joy and suffering.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
Roy's final gesture to save his nemesis from a sure obliteration shows the main character, Rick Deckard, that despite his technological structure, Roy Batty is potentially more human than real humans. In Baymax, or Big Hero 6, Hero's elder brother, Tadashi Hamada, becomes a symbol of mentorship and motivation, and transcends therefore the limits of brotherhood as a competitive relationship and undertaking throughout history. Tadashi Hamada is a positive, well-balanced young man on the way towards his own adulthood. After his death in the laboratory fire, while trying to save his professor, the healthcare robot Baymax, created by him, takes over his task of guiding the teenager Hero in the complicated allays of puberty. In his turn, Hero, the younger brother and the main human character, learns to overcome the pain of the loss of his brother in the pursuit of a meaningful life. In doing so, he transcends anger and the will to revenge, thus developing compassion and the ability to forgive, more often than not, practical instruments in dealing with the intricacies and inconsistencies of the grown-up's world. The compassionate care Baymax brings towards Hero finds its counterbalance in the three college nerds, Gogo, Wasabi, Honey Lemon, and Fred, the halfway mysterious mascot at the San Francisco Institute of Technology, who serve both as inspiration and challenge to the young and inexperienced Hero. Each of them portrays one main aspect of the complex personality of a mature man. Gogo is a tough, athletic student, definitely a woman of few words. Wasabi is a smart, slightly neurotic young man, actually highly conservative and cautious. Obviously, the most normal in a group of brazen characters. In the second part of the movie, he turns in a way into the voice of the audience and points out that what they are doing is crazy, thus grounding the development of the plot by breaking the fourth wall. While being a chemistry enthusiast, Honey Lemon is a glass is half full kind of person with a specific mad scientist spark in the twinkle of her eyes. Finally, Fred moves beyond his appearance of a school's mascot and science enthusiast, and while none of these four characters really changes along the movie, at the obligatory we need to be a team type of moment, the tension necessary in the dramatic development is created. In their unconditional love, Hero finds a sense of peace and contentment, and the strength to move forward despite dearly missing his brother. Eventually, in Blade Runner 2049, compassion is compounded by a sense of curiosity, so typical for the average humans, but displayed by Kay, the main character, and the replicant himself. Kay, the driving force beneath the storyline, which is essentially a detective plot, tries to solve a mystery about his own past, the history of replicants, the power of memory, and about what it means to be a human being. Touched by the inconspicuous presence of a flower under a dying tree, both symbols of decay, resurrection, and the continuation of life, Kay sets on a journey of initiation towards what might reveal him his own humanity. Throughout the movie, compassion and curiosity become the prerequisites for hope. The abandoned children in the orphanage and the half-replicant offspring Anna Stellan, now a grown-up, point out towards an even more distant future in which the acceptance of others' individual and radical otherness, as well as differences in the foundation of the world, and not artificial concatenations. This is eerily reminiscent of the 1950s and 1960s visionarism, displayed and described in great detail in the literary works of Philip K. Dick and Isaac Asimov, who dreamt and wrote about interstellar travel and human worlds of a future ahead of millennia, made possible by the crucial cooperation between humans and robots. Kay's final gesture as he quietly dies on the stairs of the building in which Anna's laboratory is located, after he had brought Rick Deckard from the initial Blade Runner to meet his daughter for the first time, is one of defiant challenge. They are artificial replicants, bioengineered robots or cyborgs, more human than humans because in their mechanical outfit things do not change, they do not deteriorate, and do not evolve despite events and experiences, unlike humans who learn and grow and change. A timeless question. This is a timeless question in itself. It is not answered in Blade Runner 2049, which subtly encourages viewers to debate and discuss potential meanings, options, and preferences instead of solely being passive recipients of mindless entertainment. Moreover, though, Blade Runner 2049 hints that compassion comes in humans with the ability to think freely and to act accordingly, and as the vital necessity to appreciate nature and art so clearly designed to enrich our souls. In Blade Runner, compassion is a tool to defeat death and unravel deeper than in humans' humanity in bioengineered replicants. In Baymax, or Big Hero 6, compassion is a language spoken by friends acting as the ersatz family around the main character, employed to teach him the value of togetherness, trust, and community. In Blade Runner 2049, compassion is a means to convey hope, even when it appears as hope against hope and a simulation of the futile quest for a presumable human core. As such, compassion mediates the advancement towards the discovery of a courageous vision, attitude, and behavior, which then allows for selflessness in otherness. The word courage has developed from the Latin word cor, which means heart. Traditionally, courage refers to the quality of mind which enables one to meet danger and trouble without fear, because the heart is the seat of emotions and hence keeps one's spirit, temperament, and way of being. Boldness as a choice and willingness to confront agony, pain, danger, uncertainty, intimidation, compounded by the moral fortitude and physical strength to act in accordance with higher values in order to protect those in need, are essential parts of courage as it has been transmitted throughout the centuries. Recently, though, the understanding of courage has shifted from its initial meaning of direct confrontation with adversity towards a softer approach. The ability to live in the present, to enjoy one's life, and to immerse oneself in the authenticity and vulnerability of being one's true self. Therefore, living authentically and in tune with one's vulnerable identity have slowly turned into the crucial components of the late modern conceptualization of courage. The inner urge to be faithful to one's nature and propensities rather than to adapt to social pressures, and the enthusiasm to open up towards others and to share one's innermost thoughts, emotions, expectations are essential features of a life lived courageously. wholeheartedly. In Blade Runner, the acute awareness of the fragility of human life arises from the characters' interactions. The narrative loop circumscribing the possible humanity of the replicants, which is never really confirmed or nor denied, metamorphoses gradually into an existential inquiry into the meaning of life. Live life plenarily, grasp every moment, and engage profoundly with life's realities, as nobody knows where it might end, is the subliminal message. Vangelis' daunting music, an eerie combination of human voices processed electronically and unidentifiable instruments, subliminally creates an inescapable tension between the dark, overwhelming tones of the movie and the hopeful finale, simultaneously questioning the very foundation of being human. Is it a choice, a chance, or a crime? Interestingly enough, in this interpretation of the word courage, the replicants, rather than the human, display the ability to live life at its utmost, to grab any opportunity at savoring it, and to delve into the adventures it offers. The replicants were created to support humans and to fulfill the tasks humans were too weak to pursue efficiently. But ironically, they somehow appear both inclined to cling to life and to enjoy it without doubting its value, meaning duration. In opposition to them, those deemed as human are entangled in everyday struggles and ambitions, too confused to realize their own fragility and too busy to stop and ask themselves the hard questions which might lead to the revelation of their own vulnerable core, and therefore to the real self, hidden beneath thick strata of conventions. In Rachel Starrell's ambivalent character, exquisitely embodied by Sean Young, Rick Deckard finds first insinuations of love as romantic attachment and gradually discovers within himself the resources to transcend his mission in the name of a greater goal, to love and be loved. In the narrative development of their interaction, various issues are addressed, such as the protective force of memories or of the lack thereof, the importance of allowing secrets to be just that, secrets, the necessity to stand up for oneself, and in doing so to shelter what or who truly matters from the evils of impersonal politic-economic decisions. This dramaturgic pursuit slowly leads to the fusion of the two layers of significance of courage into one conglomerate. Living authentically in the name of one's true self means eventually safeguarding those who matter to us from life-threatening dangers. On the other hand, Baymax, Big Hero 6, story is both fun and engaging, thus strongly contributing to an atmosphere of ludic wholeheartedness. In a way, it combines a typical coming-of-age narrative line akin to Spider-Man's grasping with great power, with the darker tones of finding one's true self in the midst of malevolent forces. Nevertheless, it moves beyond this concatenation of themes towards a more direct relatability with audiences. Hence, viewers do not just watch Hero struggle as a teenager to define the man he wants to become, in particular after the tragic loss of his elder brother. They also observe Baymax and his halfway incredulous, halfway desirable advancement from a robotic nurse into a full sentient being. It is their relationship growth that drives Hero on his pathway towards maturity while engaging the core elements of the story. Or, better put, it is in their relationship with its warmth, reliability, humanness that Hero is led to discover his own pathway towards maturity. However, rather than its plot, the structure and configuration of the characters are the strongest assets of Baymax, or Big Hero 6. In the first place, Baymax, the healthcare robot, brings together two main elements of sustained efforts in redefining masculinity in late modernity. On the one hand, there is what one might call the concept of tough cuteness as a practical gate into adulthood, as Hiro Hamada, the male teenager whose care Baymax takes over, gradually discovers. On the other hand, the concept of cool kindness is intertwined, turning Baymax, the healthcare robot, into a symbolic archetype of the fruitful juxtaposition between the non-humanity of its character and the empathic warmth it radiates, which is, in fact, one of the key ingredients in the success story of Walt Disney Animation since its inception as the world knows it in 1929. Through the character of Baymax, this first official feature crossover cooperation between Marvel and Disney combines what the House of Mouse and the House of Ideas do best and unifies them into a warm, funny, heartfelt, riveting adventure film. In his quest for love, acceptance, and belonging, Hiro Hamada uncovers a whole new universe of significance and engagement, in which friendship and individual freedom constitute the foundation of an innovative attitude towards self and others. Traditionally transmitted competition and repression turn into creative interdependence, peaceful coexistence, and constructive cooperation, which is, after all, the essence of being a man in today's world, shaping a prosperous future of peace and abundance for as many of us as possible. In this train of thought, Blade Runner 2049 discloses its protagonist's pursuit on the quest for the meaning of life. Kay's journey towards who he hopes he might be, a real human, a product of the love story between a man and a female replicant, for whom the man had left everything behind, which started with hope as catalyst, ends up in a grand gesture of acceptance and amor fati in Friedrich Nietzsche's words. Kay learns to confront his own yearning for being human and to radically accept, in one of the most heartbreaking cinema scenes in recent history, its impossibility. Additionally, like in the initial Blade Runner, rage and revenge seem to be no options for replicants, as instead they turn inwards and bring forth the best possible choice. Kay's story is not so much about living plenarily, although it magnificently displays the loss of individuality and serenity in a world too heavily reliant on technology and on its monetization, in parallel with the sterility of technological overcompensation at the cost of simplicity, joy, and immediate togetherness. Kay's story is about the value of courage in facing life as it comes and in dealing with it accordingly, in dignity. While Blade Runner 2049 explores profound issues of identity ethics, human extinction, cybernetic enhancement, and their philosophical counterparts, such as freedom and control, wealth and oppression, love and indifference towards children, it does not approach Kay's decisions, gestures, actions from an ethical perspective, but subtly underscores them with a sense of acute curiosity, which then leads to courageous undertakings. Eventually, Kay becomes more than a distant echo of Franz Kafka's Joseph K., the main character in the notoriously famous novel The Trial, The Process, written in 1914 and 1915 and published posthumously in 1925. Franz Kafka's Joseph K. is a man arrested and prosecuted by a remote, inaccessible authority, with the nature of his crime revealed neither to him nor to the reader. Kafka's novel tells of the intricacies of modern systems, which are neither correct nor transparent, despite being made by humans for humans. And in its own way, Blade Runner 2049 tells a similar story motivated by absurd, abrupt, aberrant developments in which the individual does not have a voice, and the courage to embrace one's own destiny and death is the only ethical alternative to exist in dignity. In Blade Runner, courage is the way to view and approach others, while carefully wondering about one's position in the world in an attempt to overcome loneliness and meaninglessness. In Baymax or Big Hero 6, on the other hand, courage is an existential attitude which opens up avenues of self-awareness and communication. Finally, in Blade Runner 2049, courage is plainly bravery in the face of inevitable and inevitably painful truth in the name of a shared human condition which no humans so desperately long for. Consequently, commitment creates the transition towards strength and warmth, which then turns pragmatic love from an abstract concept into a concrete skill. The third and probably the most important characteristic of pragmatic love is commitment. It binds compassion and courage into the flexible, unpredictable network of life and allows them to essentially contribute to the functionality of individuals. The three elements constituting commitment are perseverance, the ability to keep on going even when the perspectives seem bleak and the energy is low, or particularly in those moments, gratitude, the capacity to see events, humans, being, things as parts of a greater whole instead of internalizing them as insurmountable obstacles, and respect, the skill to allow everyone and everything to exist in their own radical truth irrespective of our expectations. Commitment goes far beyond the obligation to keep one's promise. Commitment is an existential attitude which serves simultaneously as a moral compass in times of confusion, so that difficulties are not only observed and defeated, but crucial lessons are drawn from them as well. Rick Deckard is one of the most symbolic cinema characters. This status results from the metamorphose occurring during his journey of initiation, which is the narrative pretext in Blade Runner. Like Andrew Holland in Another Time and in Another Space, and in another genre, Isaac Asimov's science fiction novel The End of Eternity from 1955, Rick Deckard evolves throughout the plot from a resolute member of the institution to which he had been assigned to and which he serves faithfully to the best of his ability into a symbol of love. In his encounters with Rachel, he learns the various layers of his identity and the increasingly deeper vaults of his own loneliness and meaninglessness until he transforms them into his existential mission. Unlike Andrew Holland, though, Rick does not turn from an agent of the mechanisms he had previously attended to into their very nemesis. Instead, he dissolves into the anonymity provided by dystopian futures. Moreover, his symbolical power as a cinema character resides in the universality of his gestures and in the memorability of his commitment to the tasks he has to fulfill as a policeman, which subsequently short-circuit his decisions and choices. In Rick's interactions with the secondary characters, his supervisors, the replicants, he is supposed to terminally eliminate the manufacturers of the bioengineered synthetic humans, the street vendors, the passerbys. A user's sense of purposelessness creeps in, which is gently dissolved during his encounters with Raquel. Like Andrew Harlan and Noyes Lambert in Asimov's novel, Rick and Raquel undergo a subtle transformation from an illicit love affair into the very cornerstone of the intrigue leading to an unexpectedly emotional denouement. Likewise, on the background of the intransigent reality they face every day, the feminine presence confers both male characters a ray of light and hope to hold on to, something to protect and to believe in. Beneath the conservatism of the gender roles displayed, Rick's, like Andrew's individuality, gathers clear contours precisely due to Raquel's, respectively, noise, love, and influences. Inspired initially by the Marvel Comics superhero team Big Hero 6, Baymax or Big Hero 6 goes far beyond the superficial plot of telling the story of a young robotics prodigy who forms a superhero team to combat a masked villain. Rather, by means of aesthetic conversion and ideological transfer, Baymax or Big Hero 6 displays commitment as a means to attain kindness and its instrumentality as a newly discovered driving force on the background of typically Japanese metropolitan landscapes, combined with slightly Victorian atmospheres and home interior designs. In the construction of love as a pragmatic endeavor, commitment to one's goals is simultaneously displayed as a complex architecture encompassing respect, gratitude, loyalty, unconditional caring, and discipline, in a practical attempt to replace the prevailing understanding of love as romantic love with the neo-humanist vision of love as authentic self-love, as famously stated by Erich Fromm more than 6 decades ago. Set in a standalone parallel universe in which San Francisco was largely rebuilt by Japanese immigrants in the aftermath of the devastating earthquake which had occurred in 1906, although this premise is actually never stated in the movie, Baymax or Big Hero 6 combines in the huggable stature of its main robot character various dimensions. Firstly, heroes' lessons are necessary rites of passage. Secondly, advanced technology, coexisting with the retro feeling displayed by San Francisco, transcends the referentiality to late modernity. Thirdly, the cityscape consisting of skyscrapers, adjoining hills, and mini islands includes the reshaped Golden Gate as several overlapped torii, which are entrance gates at Shinto shrines in Japan, and therefore questions geographical boundaries. Fourthly, the inclusion of a no mask, falsely identified in the movie as a kabuki mask, as the identification attribute of the evil character, is an essential universalization strategy in the procedure of dissolving cultural prejudices and symbolically initiates a future more open to genuine diversity. Hero's prodigal talents are not prerequisites to his growth into a functional adult. Underway, they turn momentarily into dangerous liabilities, threatening to disrupt the project of understanding what had happened instead of blindly revenging as a means to put a symbolical band-aid over personal pains and losses. Surrounded by devoted friends who form an ersatz family including his aunt and Baymax, Hero gradually learns the value of steadily moving forward and not jumping stages, while accepting healing as part of the same process, even when letting go of past hurts means letting go of an important part of one's former identity as well. Unlike the first Blade Runner and Baymax or Big Hero 6, who stay after all at the surface of human emotions, Blade Runner 2049 digs into the perishability of humanness and questions its universalist prerogatives. In the face of adversity and loneliness, what can the individual do? Kay does not have an answer. He does not even start with looking for an answer. He is neither motivated by boredom and a general sense of malaise like Rick Deckard, nor by grief provoked by the loss of a beloved brother, like Hero. Instead, he commits himself to a journey of initiation in which he acts both as the protagonist and as the antagonist. A mere tool in the hands of ruthless, psychopathic police superiors and corporation executives, Kay emulates human subjects in his quest. Like the tiny flower which kickstarts his journey, or like the soft snowflakes which end it, Kay is merely an insignificant piece within the continuously moving mechanisms of the world. In doing so, and despite his mechanical bioengineered structure, Kay manages to turn his insignificance into a voice of significance, into a cosmos of meaningful transformation and consistent interactions which eventually lead to pivotal experiences. Particularly in his encounters with the elderly Rick Deckard, in whom Kay feels like finding a father due to his assumption to be his child, there is this warm-hearted dynamic of intergenerational transfer towards a better future, a future of hope and well-being for as many of us as possible. Their gestures of commitment to being their true selves bring them together on the stage of potential worlds to come. Their first encounter in the derelict casino of Las Vegas and the ensuing fight are reminiscent of long-gone life stories, as are the decrepit holograms of Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, Liberace. Once a symbol of limitless possibilities, the casino is the hideout of dreams and hope. In Deckard's fatherly figure, Kay attempts to see glimpses of his own humanity, fleeting glimpses, as it turns out, when Fraser, the leader of the replicant freedom movement, discloses the gender of Deckard's and Raquel's child. Once again, though, Kay's commitment to truth and unconditional humanness leads him to find the best outcome for all those involved. Transcending his own otherness as a true to himself replicant, he reunites father and daughter. In Blade Runner, commitment becomes the life force, which enables the main character to overcome his condition. In Baymax or Big Hero 6, commitment is the precondition sine qua non of the main character's progress into a functional existence, accompanied, guided, and supported by his friends. In Blade Runner 2049, commitment is the thread which unites humans and non-humans in their common quest for hope and a future to hope in or for. More than an ideological artifact or an aesthetic construction, commitment confers solidity and identificatory cohesion to narrative lines, which would otherwise fall into the banality of epic overcompensation. Eventually, in grasping the depth of love as a pragmatic endeavor and not as an ideatic state of mind and soul, humans and robots learn the value of togetherness in a world, present as well as future, of uncertainty, evil, and cruelty. So far, this video has been focusing on the core characteristics of pragmatic love as a means to conceptualize and develop a sense of urgency towards the necessity to embrace, rather than reject, as traditionally taught, one's budding uniqueness. In discussing three cinema productions which center on the relationship between humans and robots or bioengineered replicants, the theoretical elements shifted gradually from the phenomenological experience to the quotidian participation and made possible the slow emergence of a state of awe in relation to both the mental emotional perception and its subsequent processing of love as a pragmatic endeavor. Awe is understood, therefore, as an existential attitude which allows the consistent exploration of one's individual embedding into the socio-economic system, be it external or internal, in a light-hearted, non-judgmental manner. This puts awe in direct correlation to the sublime, as described by Robert Greene in his writings, a combination of Sigmund Freud's or Romain Rolland's oceanal feeling and of the Stoics' understanding of one's own mortality as expressed in Memento Mori, or Remember That You Will Die. Furthermore, all three cinema works analyzed in this video transcended both at the time of their release and in the decades and years ever since prevailing stereotypes on science fiction productions, so that in their central journeys of initiation, the fears and confusions of late modern young men and teenagers, notably male ones, are realistically and emotionally depicted. Simultaneously, these three cinema productions decisively move away from the classic plot of giving in to one's negative emotions while pursuing narrative policies of overcoming sadness, loss, and the wish to retaliate. In addition, Blade Runner and Baymax, or Big Hero 6, are far more than adaptations of their original releases, and Blade Runner 2049 deepens its prequel rather than turning into its epigonic continuation. Nonetheless, all three movies play honest tribute to their aesthetic ideological sources, surpass their models, and develop own universes with clear messages and profiles. Blade Runner and Baymax Big Hero 6 draw on Japanese elements, but Blade Runner 2049 pivots towards a rarely encountered diversity of images and ideas, acknowledged in a Hollywood production so far. Finally, all of them are futuristic works, recreating avant la lettre the world of tomorrow, a dystopian space dominated by bleak oppression and hopelessness, respectively by violence and resentment, but containing the very seeds of a beautiful resurrection, fresh and convincingly attractive in its colorful plurality. The three dimensions of pragmatic love outlined in Blade Runner, on the background of a dark dystopian future in which humans are increasingly controlled by over-individual systems, highlight the necessity of robots or so-called replicants in the stress ratio of grasping and comprehending the humanity of humans as a counterforce. It is pointedly during the interaction with the fugitive replicants, whom he is tasked to eliminate, that the main character, Rick Deckard, is confronted with his own skewed sense of self and is ultimately compelled to acknowledge the relativity of rules in the name of love. Moreover, in Raquel's questionings about her own nature, she has been implemented with memories of a little girl, but at some point she starts inquiring into the veridicality of her own thoughts, emotional states. Rick is able to find his own enjoyment of life and to start to there thinking about pursuing a pathway of more authentic, perhaps even more sustainable goals. One might go as far as to argue that Blade Runner avoids the dispiritedness of punk noir by tuning into the emotionality of the narrative line, and in doing so by symbolically addressing the issues of existential meaningfulness and loving togetherness rather than the bleak chase of runaway fugitives. In this reading, Blade Runner's display of love, pragmatic or otherwise, circumscribes the main character's quotidian endeavors and pushes them in the direction of a benevolent, warm-hearted humanity rediscovered. Eventually, the compelling ambiguity and semi-obscure atmosphere of the movie serve the purpose of recovering an individual's sense of self from the unknown of over-controlling institutions and to set it free into universalism. Baymax, or Big Hero 6, is at its most basic the story of Hero's process of development from a prepubescent teen into a responsible adolescent. Without a direct family of his own, he appears at first sight as a typical hero with fragmented background and unable to gather the reminders of his individuality. Nonetheless, throughout the movie, Hero acknowledges the presence of those around him, both humans and non-humans, as necessary entities to accompany him on his journey into a functional adulthood. In Baymax or Big Hero 6, what is conceptualized as pragmatic love appears as a juxtaposition of recovery from loss, slowly getting accustomed to cope with the new reality while learning not to demonize potential enemies, and finding the willingness to move forward instead of remaining stuck in the wounds of the past. The catalyst beneath this entire protocol is, of course, the healthcare robot Baymax, who becomes thus a symbol of fraternal love and a glimpse into the potentialities of the future. A future of respect and loyalty, of faith and warm-heartedness. In stark contrast with the ambivalent bleakness in Blade Runner, from which it extracts its Japanese flavored inspiration of times to come, in which nations and nationalities will have disappeared and humans will have created an ecosystem which they share with robots, cyborgs, and other technologically enhanced entities, Baymax or Big Hero 6 delves into the innocent worlds of childhood and early puberty and explores with humor and optimism their ups and downs while drawing on models of healing, growth, and far-sighted vision. Hence, love turns into an instrument of discovery and development, mediated through the animated cute images of a healthcare robot acting as a friend. Lastly, Blade Runner 2049 is a tale of loss and hope, and of overcoming one's own shortcomings in the name of truth and of the greater good. While love is scarce in the general context of the movie, with its far-reaching, overwhelming dystopian landscapes, and the foundation of the narrative line is the quest for a child resulted from the love between a human and a replicant, compassion and courage serve as catalysts for the inquiry, which eventually reveals the motivating power of commitment as a liberation and empowerment skill and as a tool, both for humans and for non-humans. On the background of a detective story, with its typical twists and turns globally expanded, the main character Kay enterprises a journey into the past of mankind and of himself, which is supposed to set him free. Nonetheless, while the mystery is solved, the basic questions of the movie are not, and instead the three parameters of the definition of pragmatic love are combined in a somewhat transgressive manner. Courage appears as bravery in face of adversities, and commitment is the ability to keep on going in the name of truth and of the decision to be one's authentic best self. In such an interpretation, love as pragmatic love is an emotional space of the individual caught up in impossible dilemmas, who has to choose oneself in the protocol of saving the world. Blade Runner 2049 and its ending offers one of the most powerful lessons in self-love and self-acceptance in recorded cultural works. A life lived in the name of truth is circular in itself in terms of significance and relevance. It might be argued that self-awareness of one's own humanity begins with a reflection on the transience of human existence in relation to the potential endlessness of artificial intelligence and bioengineered entities created to simplify life. At the same time, what has been conceptualized as pragmatic love permeates the sordid numbness of the quotidian flow of events and allows for a sense of awe to rise within ourselves. This is perhaps the goal of art, to awaken the sleeping warriors inside the viewers and to send them on irresistible journeys of self-discovery. It is the objective of further scientific endeavors to delve more deeply into the dynamics and mechanics of those journeys, outlining with acuity the joys and perils of wholeheartedly exploring adventures, experimenting uncharted dimensions, and rewriting individual and collective stories. This would be for today from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm very much looking forward to welcoming you back here very soon again. Love and peace to you all.